sorry guys. First time using Keynote. No, I'm trying to get the presenter.
Oh, I think you have to stop mirroring the
Brian.
exact same thing. And literally,
Yay! Thank you, Brian.
same thing. Help me, someone help me.
Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for coming in. My chat tonight isn't quite about YellowAPI. It's actually on one of the other gigs that I actually helped. The title is Scaling WordPress for the World on a Relatively Small Budget. And the reason for being relatively small is it's actually for a non-charitable group. So, quick introduction. Who am I? I'm currently the developer advocate for YellowAPI. We sponsor, DevTO and a whole bunch of other cool events, including HackerNet's Construct. So, come to the Construct Hackathon, okay? Also, technical advisor for companies such as Kenso. I'm a principal owner of my own consulting company, Wireless Links, which we do a lot of cool, wireless, mobile, CNS work, and co-own a music school. In my complete spare time, I actually own a music school.
Kinsel's cool, but also buys Kinsel. So.
Well, there you go. So the question is, what role have I done? I've pretty much done every single role in the development world. I started out as a QA, working on Netscape starter kit on a floppy disk, all the way to multimedia development, developer, sysadmin, DevOps, even product manager. So I've done all the roles, and a piano teacher too. So I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit on this presentation. This was a message I got from one of my high school friends about a year ago, Ryan, who couldn't actually be here today because he's in UK doing a presentation of his own. And he basically said, I need some help on building out a stack for Drupal. Do you know anyone? So after 15 years after high school, I said, okay, let me go talk to Ryan. Hey, what's up? And find out that he's actually working for this cool group and needed some help. So that's what happened. Really, the mandate, so Ryan's company is called Brass Riot, and the mandate was to release a WordPress site in 2 days. It's pretty fun. And this was, when I got this message, it was October 6th, 7th, 2013. He couldn't tell me what the site was about. All he said was, it's going to be big. There's a time mandate, and the PR has already been lined up for October 17th. And he said, oh, the site's not ready yet. I can't give you the code until October 15th. And all he said was, it's a WordPress site. Well, it turns out to be the Global Slavery Index 2013, which I'm sure a lot of you guys may have heard on the news. It talks about the slavery movement and which country has the biggest enslavement. Surprisingly, Canada and US do have slaves, but the definition of slaves is up for interpretation.
They're called interns.
As Bowden said, up for interpretation.
And he's hiring.
Yes, Mercatus is hiring. Which, needless to say, October 17th, we're basically 3 to 4 pages if you ever search for slavery in Google News. We were on Reddit, subreddit, Hacker News. We got bombarded. It was quite large. Large. Which turns out to have really gruesome pictures on National Post, in Australia, news.com.au, Africa Review, BBC, The Hindu, you name it, it's pretty much everywhere around the world. So really, the real talk is, what does make a good scalable site? I mean, the few things you got to work on is one, eliminate any single points of failure. And knowing how your site can actually scale, whether it's elastic or over provisioning your site, monitoring your traffic to see if you're going to die or not, and plan for any attack and how you recover from it. Which, well, I'll kind of explain that in a couple of minutes. So, it's WordPress. It's a LAMP stack. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. Most likely not going to stray away from that unless you happen to run Windows, and I'm sorry. But really, what really happens is there's many different portions that you need to watch for scalability. The first one is actually DNS. It's funny how people just think, oh, I can just go to GoDaddy, register for a domain, and hope it doesn't go down. Well, remember when GoDaddy went down? Does anyone remember the GoDaddy? Who has a GoDaddy domain? Who has a GoDaddy domain? Who doesn't want to admit it? But same problem, right? Yeah. The one thing you got to realize is GoDaddy actually owns more than 50% of all the domains in the world.
Wow. How much?
50%. It's a huge number. Well, a lot of them are squatting, but there's also a lot of small, medium business owners, and even big companies. So one of the things is, do you trust the single registrant? Where Amazon really does well is with the Route 53. Whenever you ask for an authoritative server, they actually have 4 separate TLDs for your single name. One in an org, one in a .com, one in UK, and one somewhere else, and .net, which really spreads the risk of any DNS-based attack to a single TLD to bare minimum. If you can get to your authoritative NS, you're most likely going to resolve in Route 53. And to prefix all this, I did deploy on Amazon, so I pretty much use everything Amazon in this particular case. The next part is CDNs, Content Delivery Networks. Who here runs a big site that has a CDN? Oh, here you go. Or even small sites. But quite honestly, CDNs, I'm sure you guys heard of Cloudflare or Max CDN or even CloudFront. They're all great solutions. Some of them faster than others, but the point is, having a CDN allows you to protect, to offset your assets or anything that requires, a lot of bandwidth, but cheap bandwidth. Things that you don't need to host off your Apache stack. That's going to drain your connections and potentially suck the bandwidth of your hosting. That costs you a lot of money. So leverage a CDN. And if you ever use YSlow or Google PageSpeed, you will see one column, use CDN. So why not? Of course, the next bit is load balancers. For most people running WordPress, you're only going to have a single web server. But we're not a small of a thing. We're the global slavery index. Guess what? You kind of need a load balancer to be able to send traffic to multiple machines. So a few things to watch out for is sessions. PHP sessions are quite a killer. If anyone actually uses WordPress and build your own plugins and require sessions, you better make sure you know how to handle your sessions, whether it's database, file, or anything else. I'm going to gloss over this because it's a much bigger topic that I'm not about to cover. But that's also important. And the other bit is your load balancer redundant? And if not, you need another one, because you never know if one goes down and you need the other one to help you. Reverse proxy. That's another stack right underneath the load balancer, which is also important. Something like Varnish, Squid, or even simple Apache mod cache can be the last line of defense before you hit the PHP layer. Things that will allow your site to stay up even if your PHP instance is drained, you run off database connections, or God forbid you have really bad code and you do something bad. Whatever happens, at least you got additional level of layer of protection. But at the same time, having a reverse proxy makes debugging a lot more difficult. If you have a staging stack, and then you decide to deploy, and you don't know why the page hung around there, and why is it there, and when it shouldn't, it gets a little bit more tricky to check. really the biggest meaty part is your web server, Apache PHP, which is your lifeblood of WordPress. Again, session handling is really the biggest thing that you need to worry about. Beyond that, configuring Apache so that you don't swap. Having the least amount of modules you need within Apache itself so that you don't take up as much memory footprint, as well as picking the right PHP runtime that will best suit your kind of applications, whether it's FastCGI, mod PHP, whatever it is. I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm sure there are people who like Lady or Nginx or any of the new iterations of Nginx out there. Doesn't really matter. It's a web server stack. As long as you plan properly and configure it fine, you'll be good. But lastly, the biggest single point of failure is everything else you can scale pretty well. Databases. MySQL is one thing that you love to hate and you hate to love. It's one of those things where you can have as many read slaves as you can get, but there's only one writer. So you are forever stuck. That you need to have a really good plan on replication, failover, and how do you deal with maximum connection limits. And lastly, disk. Disk is a really interesting problem because WordPress is something that you read and write into. You got editors who need to post or blogs or edit something on the fly, and they love saying, oh, I upload this image, can we get this up? Well, when you have 20 servers running in the farm, how do you upload a single image and make it up to all 20 servers instantaneously? So there's GlusterFS, there's S3, there's NFS if you're crazy enough to run it on Amazon or Azure. Pick your poison, basically. Each one of them has their advantages and disadvantages, especially S3, where the quote is eventual consistency. That's what they call their write state. But alas, we had no choice but to embrace Amazon AWS. I did have a 48-hour mandate. So what do we do? 3 continents: Sydney, Ireland, North Virginia. It is pretty crazy. And we got CloudFront push and CloudFront pull. We got 3 ELBs. We use Route 53 for DNS with global latency, RDS, and S3. We've done everything. We put an SES for mail sending. So we pretty much use every single bit of Amazon you can find to make the site scale. And quickly, the application stack, fairly simple: Varnish, Apache, PHP, mod PHP, and WordPress. And Global Slavery Index is very cool because they use CartoDB to do all their map tiles, and Stripe for, Script, get their name right, for the actual document themselves. So you can view it on the web without a PDF viewer. So the actual application was built very cleverly by Grass Riots and team. And the most important part was they are able to have their own independent editor stack on WordPress to edit their articles even while there's a lot of traffic hitting the site. Of course, precautions for scaling WordPress. Separating your admin and end user instance is very important. S3 for doing storage because we're using Amazon, and CDN caching to protect us against things. What can go wrong? Anyone can say? Well, the answer is everything. Well, here's our problem. October 17th is the first inclination of something. And this is visits by the hour because the page basically has no other pages and Google can't really track well. But, well, oh boy. We got a wonderful gap in there for that 1 hour. And that's really my oh crap moment. So, yeah. Wonderful thing we picked, RDS. One of the biggest lessons we learned about RDS is it is highly available within the same geographical area. We thought we could deploy a read replica around the world? And the answer was no, you can't. Not until you get to MySQL 5.6. So we really got screwed big time as we launched the different regional instances, and all of a sudden we're dealing with 5-second page loads around the world, even with all the other things we did, and big instances, and we were dying. We're absolutely dying. And that was a very costly mistake. There was 250 mils in Sydney, but it was 5 seconds in Europe and about 3.5 seconds in North Virginia. So what we find is the link between Sydney to Europe is actually the worst, even though they're geographically similar. But we also rely on Pingdom for external monitoring. Great service, Pingdom, but it's not meant for these kind of server monitoring. CloudWatch is one of the most important services you can actually use, but we just didn't have enough time to configure it because it's confusing. And we went on the cheap. We actually started off with a whole bunch of T1 micro instances, hoping that we can just scale as much as we can with micro instances as we get on traffic. Turns out, yeah, we forgot to configure Apache well enough, and we basically got nailed by about 30 hits a second, just by accident. Well, the obligatory meme, what can we do better? The answer is, more power. But quite honestly, what we really needed was a better configuration. It wasn't more power. The more power we toss at it, the bigger the problem we actually created for ourselves, because we end up, hitting maximum connection limits, and we were killing ourselves with overhead. So homebrew MySQL is actually a very important one. In my previous job, actually at Yellow Pages, we use RightScale to deploy all our instances, and RightScale have amazing MySQL master and slave templates that really helps with the administration aid. And with those, you can actually deploy read slaves around the world even across from different clouds. But in our case, we're on a limited budget with 48 hours, remember, and I actually got a call at that time at 6 in the morning, and my kids didn't even wake up yet. So that was rather fun to deal with a cranky boss in the UK saying, the site is done, the site is done, the site is done, the site is done. Yeah, it wasn't really, it wasn't really funny at all when you get it on Skype and a text message and a phone call. But really the other thing is picking smarter EC2 instances. It's not about picking a big instance, it's picking a better instance for your workload. It probably needs a little bit more memory, needs a ethereal storage for swap, and lastly, tune your Apache. Trim the fat, and actually curb the number of connections that your particular EC2 instance can handle. On a 2 gig instance, you can probably do between 30 to 40 connections before you truly max out on memory footprint. So it's not about how many connections your TCP can handle, it's about the number of PHP, Apache, HTTP instances you can run in memory to process the request. Because everything else has been written off into your CDN or already offloaded to our machine to begin with. So at the end, the graph for an ideal configuration is still fairly similar, but the biggest difference is the MySQL slaves are all within each of the geographical region, and all the writes will still go back to your master. But the number of writes you do is very rare, because it might be some tracking or forward errors that you have a WordPress plugin for or some other thing. But having the editor instance in the same region as your master mitigates most of the write delays that you actually have. So that turns out to be one of the better configurations. So they love the deployment that we did for Global Slavery Index, that we converted the WordPress, the walkfree.org website, which is their main foundation website from Drupal, which was the original message, to WordPress in December. Better configuration, learn from some of our mistakes, and we have a pretty flawless cutover on December 18th. And yes, for those who think about December 18th, it is usually lockdown for data centers. You don't usually deploy in December before the holidays. But we took a gamble. And well, someone was, so one of the guys at Glasswire talked to me this morning, and he said, I told him, oh, I'd like to update your PHP and Apache to, PHP 5.5 and Apache 2.4. He said, please don't do that until I come back from the UK. I said, I may be a maverick, but I'm not suicidal. There's obviously need to be a staging stack that we do and test all the deployment. And of course, the important part is make a list and check it twice, just like Santa.
Check it twice.
Well, and it's amazing. Amazon AWS deployment is fairly simple. You click a few switches, everything works. But the answer is there are so many strange knobs and switches that you need as you do your Amazon role deployment. One of the things that caught us in the middle was the course header. If anyone does any JavaScript development, I'm sure you guys understand cross-domain issues. And when we did a CDN, it was cross-domain because we were using the CloudFront DNS names instead of our own host name. So we had to reconfigure S3 to make sure we have cores and a whole bunch of other things we had to do. So things we forgot. Second thing is forward query string on CloudFront. For those who don't quite know what that means, you know how in your URLs for your JavaScript, at the end, some people append question mark, version equals 1.1.1. But those are fairly important things for CDN. Those are for cache busting. So in case you did another version of your assets or JavaScript, you want a different version, you want a different name, so that you don't access the same resource. At the same time, you want the CDNs to be able to cache that content. Well, with that switch off, every URL canonically goes back to with the path without any of your parameters behind it, which means all your assets became the same version, whether you like it or not. So that had to be fixed. The other bit is YellowAPI instance registration. We deployed the instance, we put the health check, and we said, uh-oh, how come it's not up? Then we realized we misconfigured the server, but with the health check itself, so we couldn't get the server out for some reason. And lastly, CloudWatch is one of the great tools for monitoring, but you really need to watch out for how they define the metric. So one of the things we try to define is make sure there's 2 or more servers on YellowAPI. But it turns out when you put those settings on the CloudWatch, it asks you to have a minimum of 2 instances in the same availability zone, which really defeats the purpose of having multiple availability within the zone. So in Amazon, if you guys have ever deployed on, say, North Virginia or Oregon or whatnot, you see US East 1, US East 1A, 1B, 1C, or West 1A, 1B, 1C. Well, those are different availability zones. And it is highly recommended that you have at least 1 server in each availability zone, just in case of the oh crap moment for any one zone. Does it have to be AWS? The answer is no. Google App Engine, in fact, is an amazingly fast VM instance. If we didn't have a whole bunch of things on Amazon, I would have picked Google App Engine. And of course, with today's announcement, Microsoft Azure is now cheaper than everyone for storage. So pick your poison. They're all similar. They all run things well. But I can tell you the important thing about having it on the same vendor is you get to leverage all of the features for that vendor very easily. So with Route 53, I was able to leverage the global load balancing and latency check, and S3 and CloudFront and email sending. You name it, it's there. For a small, medium deployment, you can't go wrong. But this is not an endorsement for AWS or discrediting them. They're all great players. They were there, and AWS was there first. So pick your pick. So really just to wrap up, just really do a little bit of outreach is Walk Free is a nonprofit group to abolish slavery around the world and really educating the public on slavery. It's a great initiative. It's supported by philanthropists such as Bill Gates and Bill Clinton, just to name 2 of the big celebrities endorsements. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Any questions? deployment without seeing the code or anything?
Well, I guess the cool part of what I've done in the past is I've actually brought RightScale and Amazon to Yellow Pages in 2008 when it was still in its infancy with RightScale. So I knew I was pretty comfortable in knowing the Amazon stack, and it's WordPress, and it's my high school credit. So I figured, let's take a challenge. But quite honestly, it was nerve-wracking. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe I don't get it. What's the reason for not outsourcing? Why not let some dedicated hosting company handle it?
Well, the reason is one is a grassroots effort, and number two, the group tends to like to do their own DevOps work, and they used to host themselves at Blue Ocean in Australia or GoDaddy. As a single instance. Well, you know what? It will be cheaper than running a single VPS. That's the honest truth. And given the fact that it's a very bursty service, I mean, all we had to do was 2 days of attacks, and then it's just sustained traffic. What Amazon and any of the cloud providers provide is that elasticity that you get for ramping up the service and then scaling, and then being able to scale down and now start running cheaper $40, $50 a month instances to support your needs. So that really helps with predictable growth. That's why they picked Amazon. That's why I recommend it as well. Put it down here. So I'll try to. Yes.
Any third-party tools you use, like CloudWatch, we've seen some things like New Relic?
Well, New Relic would work as well. That's great for doing application monitoring. Yellow Pages does use New Relic, and Kinso uses New Relic as well. So it's a great tool. But I think every tool has its own pros and cons. CloudWatch monitors all the way down to the server stats, the VM stats, and also the ELBs that New Relic wouldn't be able to monitor. Things such as RightScale have their own monitoring solution as well. And Longview from Linode, and there's a whole bunch of other solutions out there that you can plug in. But every type of monitoring has its own different pros and cons, from monitoring your end-to-end experience all the way to right down to how many megabytes I use in swap. Yes.
Do you look at adding any object cache at all?
The one thing I forgot to mention is WordPress W3 Total Cache is an awesome plugin. It is. We actually use that plugin with APC cache to save our butts when we absolutely need the most amount of survey.
I'd like to clarify in response to a tweet that interns are not slaves.
You said that though! I was quoting you!
And for more information, please go hire a slave or intern.ca. On GoDaddy. But more seriously, I want to do a shout out to another startup that I know is hiring, specifically around Java-related tools. Just come on. You might want to step out into the limelight a bit. YellowAPI, CEO, founder of Real Sociable. Don't forget that startup. So again, if you're for Java, please feel free to talk to YellowAPI at Real Sociable. I'm done.
Okay, so I'll post watch for a tweet from me. I'll post my presentation with my speaker notes removed somewhere. And if there's any questions, send me an email or send me a tweet. More than welcome to help anyone out with any self-related issues.
These slides will be up on the DevTO website as well.